Welcome to Recruitment Mindset. Our mission is to serve you with bold conversations about business, recruitment, leadership, and personal development. Open your mind and prepare for discovery, creation, and transformation. And here's your host, Ross Cunningham.
First of all, thank you very much for joining us at the Recruitment Mindset podcast. I am super excited to announce that we have Michele Henshaw, who's a coach and life mentor for many individuals throughout the UK and globally. Myself and Michele, we met about 8-9 years ago, and it was literally just sitting on a train. I think it was going to London, and I had the opportunity to have a couple of hours conversation with Michele. And since then, the shifts that we've had in terms of thinking, support, and helping other people has been absolutely phenomenal. And I was absolutely honoured that Michelle's agreed to come onto the show and speak about the paradigm shift through resistance, which is absolutely a phenomenal topic. And the three things that we're going to cover is how to work on yourself, making sure that you don't forget self, the transition bridge, which Michelle's been speaking about of late in a number of videos, and also being brutally honest of where you are in your life at this time. So just before we start, Michele, I would like you to introduce yourself to our listeners and audience. Can you please give me just a wee overview of you, please?
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm so thrilled and genuinely feel privileged to have been on this journey with you for the last 7 or 8 years. It's been quite a journey, I think, for both of us. So I'm hugely honoured to have been even a small part of that. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this. It's great. I am a coach and mentor. Most of my clients refer to me as a woo-woo business coach. Which I'm fully embracing. I used to have some resistance around that for a while, but I'm fully embracing that now. So I guess that what that means is that I don't just coach businesses, I coach and mentor people, because people and their businesses are one and the same thing. Businesses are people, made up of people and driven by people. So to me, it's all about getting people and life and business aligned, and it's only when all of those things are lined up and working well together that things really happen in an easy, flowing, successful way.
Yeah.
So a business coach with a difference, I suppose. Yeah,
and that's a good point, because I know through our own collective journey, you've helped me with certain points in my life with that, which I'm a big advocate of. And I wanted to ask, where does the woo-woo come from? Where does that one come from? That's definitely a tag I've not heard before.
It's a term that, well, I have to say, when I worked in advertising and marketing, notoriously difficult and challenging industry for 24 years.
Wow.
I managed to survive 24 years. And my approach to when I got into management and senior management, it was running agencies. Of course, then you stop doing the job and you start managing people. Yeah. And so I came across, and I think when we met actually on the train, I was on my way down to London. And I think it was it might even be 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
10 years ago, because I was on my way to London to do my final bit of training for my NLP master practitioner at the time. So I got into things like NLP and coaching and mentoring, training and all of that to help me better manage people. Yeah. But at the time, because we're talking 30 odd years ago now, no. Almost 20 years ago, when I started doing that kind of training, it was very unusual. It was very unusual anyway, but it was very unusual in that industry, because it was a bit of an old boys network, and management was, well, there was only one management style. It was either do it my way or it's the highway. Yeah. And it was rod of iron, and it was all about who could be in the office first and who could stay the latest, regardless of whether they were productive in between. So my approach of recognizing individuals and having bespoke management styles for individuals and trying to nurture and encourage and grow people was seen as very different. It was described in lots of other ways that we probably can't repeat on a podcast.
This is what we're here for. Just open it up. I'm not fussed.
Well, I think one of my he was a lovely guy, actually, but one of my original mentors who, I mean, I'd be in my 30s, maybe early 30s at the time. He was already close to retirement. Not that anybody ever retires in advertising, they just die. But he described me as a fucking lunatic.
Right, okay. That's a
because, but he was saying it in a kind way, because what he was saying to me is, they're just going to take advantage of you. People are just going to take advantage of you if you take this approach.
Yeah.
And that was totally not my experience at all. And so the woo-woo thing was the way people in the industry started to describe me in a kind of, I suppose, a loving, critical way. Yeah. And woo-woo just, I think, means a bit sort of off with the fairies, a bit spiritual, a bit out there. Yeah. But now I fully embrace that. And one of my original mentors is sadly a really good friend and a close mentor, who, you know, I lost just very, very recently, actually. It hit me quite hard. He was a Taoist master, yeah. And an all-round cheeky rascal. And he used to talk about the Wu way, which is the Taoist way, which means the path of least resistance.
Yes.
So I'm embracing that now.
Ah, great. And that probably shifts us right into the topic, which is the paradigm shift through resistance. Can you talk us through that? So the first step was all about how to work on self and not forgetting about self. Can you just talk me through that, please?
Yeah, well, I think particularly in the people helping industry, I talk a lot about the danger of this guru complex.
Yeah.
And I don't use this very lightly, and I don't use it very often, but I think it's entirely appropriate in this situation. And I think we, as leaders in business and as people helpers, any of us in any field or any area of our lives have got to be very, very careful of trying to put ourselves in this position of guru.
Yeah.
And I think particularly in the people helping industry, because, and we have both seen it, I'm sure, that when you start to learn all of this amazing stuff about personal development, and it opens your mind and it blows your mind, and you see the incredible possibilities that opens up for you, all you want to do is go and share it with other people. But how we share that is really important. And I think there's a real danger that we can put ourselves in this position of being a guru. Yeah. And then we stop learning.
Yeah, I think
stop learning.
I think it's quite interesting, Michelle, because on a previous podcast, episode 1, we were speaking about going down that sort of rabbit hole, let's say, of personal development and growth. And you can go there, when you start absorbing the books, the literature, all the new learnings, sometimes it's a bit difficult to remove yourself from that. And I think one of the key points that I'd mentioned is you need to be taking immediate action. And if you are reading a book, take notes of certain points that are golden nuggets for you that you can use. Because personally, I'm speaking, I went through a period where I was reading so many books, I was reading the books, but I wasn't really absorbing the books. And I had to go back and do that again. Do you have any tips for that to help people on their journey when they're going through personal development?
Yes, I think there's a point you have to stop.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a real danger that we can. It's funny because I was having a conversation with a client about this last week, and she showed me because we were on Teams. Actually, we went on Zoom. Are we allowed to say Teams while we're on Zoom? We might get shut down.
You want?
We might get struck by lightning.
You can say anything you want, Michelle. This is what this podcast is all about. It's just open yourself up. It's fine, no problem.
Careful what you wish for. So she was showing me her bookshelves, and they went sort of, all up the side, around the back, and all that. And the majority of them were either business or personal development related. And I could see them, I could see all the shelves. And I said, just tell me how many of those books you've read.
Oh, big question, that one.
So she said, I reckon about 50%. Mm-hmm. I think she was quite proud of that. Let's not make any judgments, that's fine. Yeah. But I said, so of that 50% that you've read, how many of them can you remember? Oh, that was a whole different question.
Yes.
There was maybe a handful. But I said, out of that handful then, how much of what you read in those books have you actually implemented?
Amazing question.
She couldn't answer the question.
And that's a harsh reality. I think there was a statistic done in America, Michelle, where there's about 3% of the population would walk into a library and pick up a book. And it's fine to read books and listen to audios, but what you actually implementing is immediate action. That's a really valuable point. And that leads back onto your story. So what was the outcome from that then when you asked that question?
Well, I think it was an eye-opener, and it wasn't something we expected to be talking about, but it's a bit of an eye-opener. But I think there's another point to that as well, that I've read books and I've read them from cover to cover, and then decided not to implement anything I've read in there.
That's fine as well.
Because it didn't resonate with me.
Yep.
And I think sometimes we read and absorb and consume as a form of procrastination. And so now I am incredibly selective. I'm hugely passionate about books. Books literally saved my life when I was a child. Being able to escape into those worlds and to learn and explore possibilities and all of that can literally save my life as a child. But now I am incredibly selective about what I consume and how often I consume it.
Yeah.
Because we've got to tap into our own inner knowing. And I think sometimes there's a danger. We've got to be very careful that we don't look to consume in order to avoid tapping into our own knowing and on our own power.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And I think that part in itself it's really interesting, because I had some sad news in January as well. I think you'll be aware of that. When I had a friend who was on a personal development journey and had got himself into a situation of a lot of debt. He spent about 50k, I think, on his learning sort of development program. And it got that intense for him that he took his life in January, which was really, really sad. And I think that was the shifting between learning and then implementing. I don't think he got away from that learning piece and didn't know how to get out to start implementing. And that's probably the other end of the scale. Sometimes you can read all the motivational stuff, read the books, and it can have an adverse effect on you. Which we have to be mindful of that. We're very positive people. The people that listen to the podcast will find that as well. And but there's always other sides to individuals' journeys. The pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, and in some cases that outcome where my friend passed away, which was
it's just tragic, isn't it? And I think there's two sides to that. I think there's that's where the work on self is absolutely crucial. And that work on self doesn't necessarily mean consuming and absorbing other people's stuff.
Yeah, it's good.
So I think there's that element to that at some point we have to trust that we've consumed and absorbed enough, but only use that as influence and almost a catalyst to releasing our own knowing and our own power.
Yeah, that's really good.
And then start to work with that. And that's not to say that we don't ever look for inspiration and motivation anymore. Of course we do.
Yeah.
But then I think the other side to that awful situation with your friend is that guru status thing, because there are some people who will put themselves in a position of, and I would never say that they would deliberately get people into debt to work with them, but they don't actively discourage that.
Yeah.
And there's this constant marketing loop of, well, you do that, but then you've got to go on to do this, and if you don't, you're a failure. And then if you don't go to that next level, then maybe you're not in our clan, you're not in my tribe. And there's that, it's almost sort of guilt tripping in that. And some people long for that sense of belonging.
They do. It's funny. I went to a seminar in 2016. Brendan Bouchard, who I think is absolutely amazing, and it was worth every single penny. And one of the things that he said, and it stuck by me actually through the journey, was you'll be lucky if 2 or 3% walk away from this 4-day seminar implementing it. There's 3,000 people there. There's these things every single year, and that made me think for a wee second. You truly do need to implement what it is you're learning. Take things away that are going to work for you, but also take that that time to reflect and be peaceful inside yourself to make it work as well. That's really important.
Exactly. And, the reason that only 3 or 4% will implement may not be necessarily because they're just not action takers.
Yeah.
It may be because they genuinely feel that's not right for me. Yeah. That doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah. That's
good.
Know,
and I have to say, can I just say that that's why I stopped after a while doing group workshops and seminars, because I didn't have that personal connection with people. And I think because I only work now, as you know, in a certain kind of container.
Yes.
Because I think there is a danger in giving something to someone to go away and implement themselves and them feeling overwhelmed and out in the wilderness. And so I work with supporting them before they do that work, and then afterwards hand-holding as well, because I think there are people that really need that.
And I think, honestly, I think we all do. I think we all do in each part of our journey. I've certainly, very recently, required my hand to be held. And I think we all need that at different steps, because I couldn't do this stuff today if it wasn't from the support from the networks and the people I know through life. So, I think that handhold support is very good. But working yourself is definitely a key component. But that brings me...
And that's another really important point, because... particularly as business leaders and entrepreneurs, I think we can be notoriously bad at reaching out.
Yes.
Because we're supposed to have it all sussed and we're leading. So that's what comes to this vulnerability and bravery that we were talking about earlier that we might get onto, that you've got to be brave enough and vulnerable enough to say, even I need help sometimes.
Yeah, that's one of the books that I really love, and one of the TED Talks I think it stands out for me is Brené Brown's Vulnerability, and that really resonated with me personally. And anybody that's listening today, if they've not seen that TED Talk, they should go on and have a look at Brené Brown's Vulnerability, because it's absolutely first class.
Absolutely, and I think it's on Netflix as well now. So get her Netflix thing. Yeah.
Oh, wow, I need to check that out.
She did a special for Netflix, and that's it's kind of based on the TED Talk. Very powerful.
Wow. So that probably brings us on to the second point, which I find very fascinating, Michele, the transition bridge. Something that you've been working on, speaking about, you've been dropping videos on social media about that. Can you move on to that piece and just tell the audience a bit more about the transition bridge? I love this stuff.
Yes. So this came up with talking with a client 2-3 weeks ago, and I've since shared it with a lot of people who found it incredibly useful. So I'm referring to this thing that we're going through at the moment, and for reference, we should probably say we're talking about COVID-19, but I'm referring to it as a season. Because I don't like to name it, and it's all a bit too scientific. So I see this season that we're going through at the moment as a huge positive opportunity if we choose to grasp it, if we choose to see it that way. And I've been talking to people recently about it going in phases, and almost like a grieving process. So at first there was this denial, and we were all just trying to carry on as normal and ignoring it, and it'll go away if we just ignore it, it'll go away. And then there was the fear. There was the fear and anxiety and panic of realizing that it was actually happening. So there's a reality check, which is the next phase of grief, isn't it? Reality and realizing that something bad is happening. And so we all went into this sort of fear and anxiety of not knowing and the uncertainty. And then we went into this phase, which I would say is the most dangerous phase, of acceptance. And I think that's where we're probably still there a little bit at the moment, but we're starting to come out of that, I think. I'm feeling that with people I'm talking to anyway. But that phase of acceptance could be the most dangerous, because what we've done there is almost handed our power over. And we've felt the relief in some respects of having decision making taken away from us, and that parameters and controls put in place that mean that we can step back a bit. And there are only certain things I can do, there are certain things I can't do, because controls and parameters have been put in place. And I think the road has split then, particularly with people in business, between those that have gone in the direction of seeking new ways of doing things and new opportunities, and looking for opportunities and taking different actions. And then the fork in the other direction is well, I can't do anything, I've just got to sit back and do nothing and wait until they decide, whoever they are. So I've been talking about this shift there from through this acceptance phase, from the old paradigm, so the old ways of doing things and the old behaviors, and this is in life as well as in business, this is for us personally as well as in our businesses, the old ways of even practical things like going into the office every day from 9 till 6, or having physical meetings, face-to-face meetings, all the excuses we make about the things that we can't do because we haven't got the time, and all of that old paradigm stuff. And I talk about it in terms of baggage or luggage, if you like. So it's in a big, hefty, heavy suitcase, all of this old paradigm baggage. And I've been saying to my clients to visualize that what we're going through, coming out of this, into and out of the acceptance phase, is transition bridge. So we're in the transition from old paradigm to new paradigm, which really excites me, because the new paradigm.
Sorry, Michelle, can I add to that? So, and for the listeners, in terms of paradigm, this is basically a fundamental change or shift in what your last world looked like, or your present, to what the new world will look like in the future. This could be both mentally, physically, subconsciously, or consciously as well. Do you agree with that, Michelle?
I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree. Yeah. And so, but what we're tending to forget in this, or there's a danger of us forgetting in this acceptance phase, is that we will create the new paradigm.
Yes.
So there is a danger in the acceptance phase that we've handed control over, and I've had lots of conversations with people recently about they and it and this.
Yes.
And that kind of language insinuates that we've sort of disconnected ourselves from what's happening, and for the responsibility of what happens when we come out of this. And so this transition bridge is an opportunity for us to take back responsibility and take back power and contribute to creating the new paradigm. So rather than talking about they, because I've had lots of conversations, as I'm sure you have, about with people about well, I just hope that this lasts on the other side, that we still feel the positive effects of this on the other side. And people use terms like the other side. And I just hope that people are still compassionate on the other side. And I hope that we all still care as much as we do about the planet, and realise that the planet's starting to heal, and stop the abuse of the planet on the other side. And hope that still people stay connected, because we've been more connected than ever before on the other side. And so what I've been saying to them is, I've been challenging them on that and saying, but that's dependent on you. Who are you expecting to make that happen? There's this sort of language around they and it and that, as if it's something separate from us and something that somebody else is going to do and create. And there's a danger in that.
Yeah, there is, I think, and that is interesting, the point you're making there, Michelle, because obviously through conversations that we've both had and speaking to peers and professionals and business owners, etc., is it is up to you. It's up to you to make it happen for yourself. If it's to be, it's up to me. You've heard that phrase before. And I was speaking to a few people in my network this morning, actually, and we were discussing all things. What value can you bring to the marketplace that's going to make you either stand out or add some value to somebody else's life? But at the same time, you don't need to do any of that. If you want to sit back, chill out, take this time to heal, to reflect, to absorb what is going on, so that you're then ready to make a good move in that transition bridge, that is okay as well. That's fine. It's entirely up to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely it is. And it's, I would say it's almost crucial.
Yeah.
Because of what I'll come onto in a minute about how you get over transition bridge and what you need to do to get there. But there's a fine line between handing that power and control over permanently.
Yeah. So sorry, when you go, Michelle.
That's all right. There's a difference between doing that and just taking time out for the time being to reflect and reevaluate.
It's good. And I'm super excited to jump in there because the next phase of the transition bridge, how do you get there, and what do you have, like basic concepts or things that the listeners could take away that they would find very helpful in getting there on this transition bridge?
Yeah, so the thing I've been advising my clients to do is to imagine this baggage from the old paradigm. Mm-hmm. And what you've got the opportunity to do before you step onto transition bridge is to unpack all of that. Yeah. And it's a bit like, you know, when you're told at the airport that you've got excess baggage and you've got to clear some stuff out and leave it behind. So exactly that situation. So there's the opportunity to lighten your load and to have a really good sort out about what you can leave behind in the old paradigm that probably won't serve you well on the other side, and to make some space. Good. And then as we get onto transition bridge, I mean, the first thing is actually, you've got to be willing to make that journey over the bridge.
Yes.
So, you know, not everybody is going to do that. Some are just going to wait and see who's over there and what they create and then decide whether they want to join us or not. So the first thing is to be prepared to make the journey. But then halfway over transition bridge with your half empty luggage, you now come across the shop of abundance or the shop of plenty.
Yep, like this.
And this holds anything you like. You know, this is where you get the opportunity to use that extra space in your luggage to take anything you like with you. So new ways, new values, new ways of thinking, new behaviors, even pick up new companions maybe for the journey. You know, new connections that you want to take with you, like you're doing now. You know, you reach out to new people and you just take those with you into the new paradigm. So then you've got your efficient luggage, you know, you've got your essentials. And so when you get over in the bridge into the new paradigm, you're ready and set up to set your stall up ready for when the gates open, because the gates are going to open again.
Yeah, that's good. It's good.
I want people to be there with their stall set up, ready to go.
Yeah, I don't want this to sound controversial in any way, but I do have a shopping list myself, and it's a list of, one section is people that energize me. The other section is remove people that de-energize me. And the last section is people I'd love to meet or engage with. And I think this is a good framework or a tool that anyone can use that's listening to the podcast when they're evaluating the connections that they want to meet and how these connections can actually lift them up as well. Yep, we get it. It does start with self first, but if you don't make that contact or actually even think about or visualize the people you want to engage with, that can be a bit of a challenge. So it's just a simple process of writing down the people that energize you, the people that de-energize you, and who you would like to meet. And then you can make a decision once you've put all that out on paper.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a misconception sometimes that to leave people behind, it has to be somehow difficult and confrontational.
Not necessarily.
And it absolutely doesn't, because as you move forward, you will naturally leave them behind. They will just choose not to join you. And so you let them go with love and good grace.
Yeah, and it could be like a family member. Someone that doesn't get you is always a bit like, what are you doing now? And sometimes you'll love them just the same, but maybe you choose to spend less time in that environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've had to make some very difficult decisions like that over the years, as you well know.
That's about that over the years. I've been help on that front as well. But
I think the other important thing I have to say is that we shouldn't just think about that in terms of who we want to connect with.
Yes. We
should also not forget to remember who we can add value to without them holding us back.
That's good.
Look on the journey. We should be looking for people that we can add value to and help as well.
Great. I love that transition bridge. Just for anybody that's listening in, Michele, I'd love to share that talk that you did on video about the transition bridge for anybody that's interested. And yeah, I will ping your details on this link below so they can get access to that.
I'll send you the video and you can share it with pleasure.
Yes, that'd be awesome. The listeners would love that. That probably brings us on to the third point of the paradigm shift through resistance, which is having bravery and being honest and accepting where you are in life. Do you want to just talk through that?
Yeah. So I talk a lot about avatars in my line of work, because throughout my life, there's not enough time to talk about it here, but that I had a very difficult and traumatic childhood, growing up on my own with my violent, paranoid, schizophrenic mum, who was always a Jehovah's Witness. So she had the whole package. It's great. It's really good fun. And then through my career...
Come on, Michele, sorry, what list would she go on then?
What list would she would definitely go on sit in the deck chair, Mildred, and do some knitting in the old paradigm.
Okay. Wow. What a story.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I forgive her totally, and send her lots of love and good grace. She's no longer with us, but she would definitely be in the old paradigm, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And
she'd be happy there. She would be happy there, and that's the thing about that. Actually, some people are happier to stay. I don't know whether you've ever read the book Who Moved My Cheese.
Yes, fantastic book for anybody that's loves reading books. Fantastic.
Should definitely. It's such a quick, easy reader, but so powerful.
Him and Haw.
Him and Haw. So she would definitely be happy back there in a deck chair doing her knitting. But yeah, I talk a lot about avatars, and throughout my life, I created lots of avatars. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember Wurzel Gummidge, but I think he's had a bit of a comeback recently, hasn't he?
Has he? Wow.
So if anybody's aware of Wurzel Gummidge, that was another working title for my book for a while, actually. Wurzel Gummidge Saved My Life. I used to watch it as a child, and for anybody that doesn't know, Wurzel Gummidge was a scarecrow that used to come to life, and he wasn't very bright, obviously, because he was a scarecrow, but he had a whole set of heads for different things. So he had a counting head and a spelling head, and he had all of these different heads to fit situations that he would find himself in as he came to life and wandered around his village. And I thought this was a great idea, and I took this on as a concept as a child. And decided that I needed, because I was a very shy, introverted child, and I had a stammer, and I was bullied quite badly at school, and obviously bullied at home as well. And so I didn't do a lot of speaking and connecting at that time. You can't imagine that now, can you? Making up for it now. And so I knew somehow that I had to create a different way of being if I was going to survive, literally going to survive. I had to get more confident, more resilient, and all of that. So I decided to use this kind of concept of changing heads. The problem is, I didn't leave that behind in my childhood. I carried on with that for years into my career, in relationships and what have you. I would have these avatars, and they were all sort of versions of me, but they were all separate. And I realized that what we have to do, if we're going to be not successful, because it's the wrong word, but if we're going to feel comfortable and aligned and in flow, that we have to bring all versions of ourselves home and embrace them and embrace the perfect imperfection.
Yeah, that's good.
So particularly throughout my career, I alluded to that a little bit earlier about, the old boys network and having to do things in a certain way. And for a long time, I towed the line in that respect, but I always felt that disconnect. And I was never comfortable and never confident enough with things because it wasn't me and it wasn't my way. And to do things differently and become the woo-woo version of myself, which was really stepping into my real self, because I have a lot of spirituality. I never dared talk about any of that kind of thing with certain relationships, and certainly in my career in that industry. And so to do that took a lot of bravery
Yeah.
And it required me to be very vulnerable. And I won't say it was easy, but it was incredibly fruitful.
Yeah.
So when I finally managed to bring all those versions of my heads home and become a whole, and decide to just speak my own truth, use my own voice and be who I really was, it just grew and grew and grew. So I think that's the bravery and the vulnerability. It's almost like, I don't know whether anybody else was taught to swim like this at school, but my school was quite brutal. Yeah. So the way they taught us to swim at school was just hold your nose and jump in.
Wow.
And I think sometimes we just have to do that. We can procrastinate, and we can kid ourselves that we need all of these pieces of the puzzle in place. And well, if I can just do that, or I just need to still do this, or have that, or learn this. That's where you get these perpetual readers of CPD that we were talking about earlier, perpetual readers of books and consumers and absorbers of stuff. And it's all really just a form of procrastination, isn't it?
Interesting.
Or it can be a form of procrastination. You say, well, I've just got to read this other book, or do this other training course, or get this other qualification before I can do. And actually, sometimes what you've got to do is just hold your nose and dive in.
Yeah. I like that. So there's two takeaways: hold your nose and dive in. And whoever would have thought that Wuzzle Gummidge
Wuzzle Gummidge was incredibly inspirational for me.
And I do remember him watching some of that as I grew up as well, Wuzzle Gummidge. So yeah. Actually, you've brought me back there. I just felt like I was back in my childhoodness there for a second.
Yeah, it was a great, whoever wrote that, I can't remember who wrote it, but whoever wrote it, it was a great psychological analogy, I think, for children.
Yeah,
really, it was great.
Really good. So that's awesome, Michelle. We've went through a number of things there on the paradigm shift through resistance, and I'm really, really grateful that you've shared your feedback and opinions on all 3 points there. I really think the transition bridge is something that our listeners will get a ton of value from, and I look forward to sharing that. Just to finalise this podcast, do you just want to tell people where they can find your information and your details online, if you wouldn't mind, just to share that on this podcast, please?
Yeah, we can go to my website, which is michelehenshaw.com. 1 L in Michelle. I'm afraid that's the other thing that Mildred couldn't do, was spell very well. So it's Michelle with 1 L. And there's all sorts of resources and information on there. And I have a Facebook group called the Mindful Entrepreneur Group, Meg.
Awesome.
If anybody's interested in joining there, go share a huge amount of value in there for free, and give information about my programs and the way I work and stuff in there as well. It's packed with clients as well who are incredibly successful, and I celebrate them.
Fantastic.
So it's an incredibly supportive community. So yeah, either of those places.
Yeah, certainly highly recommendable for all listeners that are listening today. And just finally, Michelle, we do this in every single episode. we have a chat. What would you recommend as your 3 best books for anybody listening today? What's your 3 book recommendations?
Okay, so I think on a personal level, my all-time favorite and most powerful book was Helen Keller's autobiography. Excuse me.
Yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know who Helen Keller was, she suffered polio as a 3-year-old child. Wow. We're talking 19th century here, America, and was deaf, dumb, and blind.
Wow.
But went on. She found an incredible. I won't spoil the story because you should read the book. She went on she discovered the right tutor, the right mentor, I suppose, who became a lifelong friend. And she brought out the best in Helen. And Helen went on to be a philanthropist, had multiple degrees, was a public speaker. Incredible. So that was the book that literally changed my life, because I thought, when I read that book, if Helen Keller can change her life, I'm pretty sure I can have a good go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to check that out because I've not read that myself. That's a fantastic offer there. And what would be your other 2 books?
So my other one, I think, would be one of my good friend and mentors who passed earlier this year, would have to be his book, The Barefoot Doctor, Manifesto.
Oh, wow.
It's an introduction to personal development and Taoism from a very different angle, but with great humour, because he was an Essex lad and had a great mischievous sense of humour. And it's a book I go back. I have 2 copies actually, because one of them is really tatty. And it's a book I go back to all the time, just to make me smile, but to inspire me as well. And there's some really practical things in there that you can do. A great introduction to Taoism. So I would definitely recommend that.
Fantastic. And I'll send that in the links. And your final recommendation?
And my final one, I wanted to really think about something business related, really. And I think it would have to be Michael Gerber. We were talking about the other day. I know you asked for recommendations on LinkedIn. And I think it would have to be the E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah.
E-Myth Mastery is also good, but I think E-Myth Revisited is, it gives a really solid structure and a really easy way of looking at how to structure a business for personal and business success.
Yeah,
so I would have to say that.
Actually, I met the good man back in 2000 in Scotland. He'd come over for his first ever speaking event here in Scotland, and I had the opportunity to spend some time with him, so it was absolutely fantastic. And the E-Myth is a fantastic read for anybody that's listening. I would certainly recommend that book as well. It's a great read. But Michele, I just want to say, first of all, thank you very much for your time on this podcast. It was great to go through the subject of the paradigm shift through resistance. I just want to say, if there's anything that you would like to add finally before we bring this episode to an end, that would be great.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you. I've enjoyed it hugely. You know, as a stammering child that never spoke, I've certainly spoken a lot today, haven't I? So thank you for the opportunity to do that. And I'm hugely thankful for the opportunity to support you, actually, because I know how hard you've worked, and I know how challenging your own journey has been at times. So I really feel honoured to have been able to support you in this project.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And I think I'd just like to leave people thinking about just embracing their perfect imperfection. You know, stop chasing that elusive perfection, and embrace your perfect imperfection.
Awesome. Michele, thank you very much, and I'll see you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Take care.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Recruitment Mindset Podcast with Ross Cunningham. Please be sure to subscribe and share, and Ross will look forward to serving you in the next episode. Until then, take care and be great. Here's wishing you amazing success.